Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review, or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. 4 votes, 4 Republicans in the House of Representatives, who made the decision to cross the aisle, to send a message to Donald Trump about the limitations on a president's power to make war. The president says the vote is meaningless. Well, from a substantive point of view, he's right. That vote will not change American policy, and clearly in the United States Senate, there will not be a vote to affirm that position. So, the question you have to ask is a very simple one. What are the implications of the vote? It's not just Iran. It also has to do with the president's nominee for Director of National Intelligence. It also has to do with the president's decision on his slush fund to take care of his friends. It also has to do with, countless other things, including the ballroom, that the president is talking about doing. And I guess it has to do with his Arc de Triomphe, which he wants to build in Washington, D.C., and so many other efforts by this president. Now, you will note that I am using a scattergun approach. I am talking about a variety of issues, but they all come down to one thing when you really take a hard look, and that is there confidence in Donald Trump's presidency? Now, it doesn't mean much when only 4 Republicans vote against him on war powers. I concede that. I think Donald Trump was correct when he made that statement. But does it offer hope that there will be more Republicans who will stand up and just say no? I pose the question because I want you all to understand that the Republican Party is at a crossroads. With the November election fast approaching, Republicans are having to take a hard look. What's more important? Loyalty to the president, or their own survival? And maybe the two are interlocked. So clearly they are. Will the president declare war on individuals who he opposes because they oppose him? Can he afford to do that? And what does Speaker Johnson do in the midst of all of this? Let's be clear about Iran and the problem with Iran. The problem with Iran is that the price of gasoline is higher. The problem with Iran is that the cost of fertilizer is higher. The problem with Iran is that we are not winning anything in Iran, and the Strait of Hormuz is still closed, and the question becomes, what will the effect be on the world economy? All of these questions are pressing in. And at the same time, the President of the United States is insisting that the ceasefire be maintained. Well, you and I know there is no ceasefire. You and I understand that the violence between the United States and Iran has been escalating. It is clear to me that what the president's foreign policy consists of is delusional, and he will feel the impact, and we will feel the impact. And that, to me, is a critical factor. There was an announcement made yesterday that there is a deal between Lebanon and Israel. Well, you and I know that isn't true. As soon as the announcement was made, the war against Hezbollah continued, and Hezbollah's war against Israel and others continued. The simple truth is you cannot conduct foreign policy without understanding pragmatically what is really happening. The president has also admitted that he lashed out at Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu using a 4-letter word that begins with F and ends with K and is not fork. Why do I point this out to you? It is not unusual for there to be tension between allies. I'm not particularly concerned about that. What I am concerned about is the idea that we don't have a coordinated policy in the Middle East. And there seems to be no understanding on the part of this president of what Israel faces in the northern part of their country. And that is that the rockets continue to rain down, the drones continue to be used, and there is no peace in Lebanon, and certainly no peace for Israel. Let me explain as well that it appears that although the president keeps saying that Iran's military capability has been obliterated, that isn't true. We are seeing impacts in Kuwait and in other Gulf states caused by drones that continue to be fired and continue to hit. There is no peace or ceasefire in the foreseeable future. I point this out vigorously because in the end, Donald Trump is going to have to make some tough decisions, and particularly in light of this vote in the House of Representatives. If our policy in Iran and the broader Middle East continues to go south, how will the president respond when more Republicans speak up and speak out? This, my friends, is a critical moment for the Trump administration. Clearly, their approach to foreign policy is failing. Now, I want everyone to be very clear about this. Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. And most assuredly, Iran, as a nation, supporting terrorists around the world, has to be stopped. But so far, the United States has not accomplished that. I was stunned when Marco Rubio, who doubles as Secretary of State and as National Security Advisor to the President, made the statement not once, not twice, but several times yesterday that the war is over. We have won the war. Well, clearly we have not won the war. You all can see it, I can see it, and most assuredly, the Trump administration must see it as well. So what does it all mean in the end? This president is under siege. He's under siege on a whole host of issues. And the importance of that siege is how the president handles it. By the way, all of this is of the president's own creation. And so there must be Republicans, and there are at least 4 in the House of Representatives, who woke up and said to themselves, boy, oh boy, this isn't going well. Will this resonate on the grassroots? We will find out because of the November election. Can the Republicans go into a midterm election defending indefensible policies? And of course, as things escalate, as things get worse, this president is going to have to do a lot of fancy footwork in order to get out of this mess. These issues are serious because it has to do with the power of the American presidency. The fact that the House, with all the Democrats and 4 Republicans joining together, now is trying to put some semblance of a restraint on what the president is doing. And the president's complete disregard for that is not unusual. Presidents of the United States, when it comes to foreign policy, as I have said before, basically function as kings. The only time that I can think of in recent history where a president of the United States was restrained by Congress from taking the action which he clearly wanted to take was when Gerald Ford was unable to resupply South Vietnam. Congress refused to make the appropriation. We are not anywhere near there now, but the precedent exists for presidential restraint, or at least restraint on a president. Now, here's the problem. Donald Trump doesn't recognize that there are any restraints on his presidency. Certainly, he continues to proceed as if he can do anything he wants. And to be blunt, basically in foreign policy he can, unless Congress stands up. But what about domestic policy? What about building that ballroom? What about the 1776 fund to pay off those who committed insurrection against the United States? among others. For that, there is resistance, and there should be resistance. But what does it mean for the Republican Party? It means that Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance have to make fundamental decisions. Do they defend the president, or do they, at times, become critical? There is nothing wrong with criticism of the president. I am reminded that the president regularly holds cabinet meetings, except they're not really cabinet meetings. You understand that the minute the cameras are on, and what members of the cabinet do is to pay tribute to Donald Trump, it's not a cabinet meeting. There can be, and there should be, vigorous debate within the administration about what direction to take. But so far, what we're hearing, crickets, nothing, not from Republicans who today control the Republican Party. Occasionally, the former Republican leader in the Senate, whose own term will be expiring soon, Mitch McConnell, is willing to speak out. But once you've given up power, it's hard to get it back. And Mitch McConnell is in the declining days of his long service in the United States Senate. He was elected, I would remind you, in 1984, when Ronald Reagan was president of the United States. So what we are seeing now is a decline in terms of President Trump's effectiveness as a leader in the Republican Party. We are seeing more resistance. But are we seeing the kind of resistance which will change the face of the Republican Party and really include the great debates on foreign policy which should be held? I'm going to be very interested to see how the United States Senate reacts when it receives the resolution from the House. All Democratic, true, and 4 Republicans, but nonetheless a statement of opposition. Will the Republican Party be able to deal with these kinds of issues? And how will the Senate deal with them? I ask this question because we are in the process now of figuring out whether or not there are any constraints that can be placed on Donald Trump. It is a fascinating question. What is really interesting to me is that history will judge this Congress and this Republican Party harshly because they were unwilling to engage in opposition to the president, unwilling to debate fully the questions of the day, unwilling to deal even with the situation that we see with Iran or with Lebanon that are very obvious, very clear. I am reminded that it's hard to go after a president of one's own party. Eugene McCarthy and Robert F. Kennedy challenged Lyndon Johnson, who seemed impregnable in 1967. By 1968, Lyndon Johnson was ready to withdraw, if you will, from the race for the presidency. He was willing to concede that he had to make a change. I don't see that kind of flexibility in Donald Trump. And that worries me, because remember that politics is what drives everything. And if, in fact, we have a president of the United States who doesn't care if the Republican Party might lose the House, who doesn't really care about Republicans in general, but who cares only about himself and his legacy, that concerns me. We may now, because of the courts, see Donald Trump taking his name off the Kennedy Center. We may see a rebellion among Republicans so that Donald Trump's slush fund may yet be eliminated. But when we see a president of the United States proceeding to nominate Todd Blanche to be the Attorney General of the United States, when we understand that that is something which should be hotly debated and discussed, the president's personal lawyer is Attorney General, my God. I'm pointing all this out to you because I believe that when we go into question and answers tomorrow, many of you will pose these questions, and I want you to know that I have raised them. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on YouTube or Spotify, and check out any of the links to the show notes that connect with me on social media. Please use those opportunities to raise the questions with me tomorrow. Am I off base? On base? What do you think? Remember to share this episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, our goal. The show's been getting so much positive attention that we're excited to bring on the advertising support that we have, and we're considering other advertisers as well. I want you to know that I look forward to tomorrow, and I want to say a special word of thanks to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this program, who will assemble the questions, although I know some of you will send them to me individually. I look forward to tomorrow, and Gogo, thank you for everything that you do every day. I am John Rothman. I'll be back tomorrow with more.